This is a podcast-style deep dive, which means there are no visuals coming, so you can sit back, relax, and just listen. This format works great if you're commuting to work or school, going for a run or gym session, doing chores around the house, or just taking a break from screens. Scientists gave an AI a job. Not to write an essay, not to make a picture. They asked it to write the complete instructions for building a living virus. The AI wrote hundreds of thousands of designs. Scientists picked about 300 of them and actually built them in a lab. And 16 of them came alive. They infected bacteria. They copied themselves inside those bacteria, and then they killed them. Not one of those 16 viruses had ever existed on Earth before. They were invented by a machine. This was done by a team at Stanford University and the Arc Institute in California. Their study was published in the journal Science on the 6th of August, 2026, and it has been called a turning point in biology. Now, before you panic, these viruses cannot hurt you. I'll explain exactly why in a moment. But there is also a real worry here, and serious scientists are the ones raising it. So let's go through the whole thing properly. What they did, why it could save lives, and what could go wrong. First, one thing you need to understand, every living thing has a set of instructions inside it. Those instructions are written in DNA. DNA is basically a very long message written with only 4 letters: A, T, G, and C. That message tells the cell what to build and in what order. It is a recipe. The complete recipe for one living thing is called its genome. A human genome is enormous, around 3 billion letters long. But a virus is much smaller. Some viruses have a recipe only a few thousand letters long. And that is what makes a virus a good starting point. It is the smallest complete recipe in biology. And here is the important part. Until now, humans could only edit that recipe, change a few letters here and there, copy something that already exists in nature. What happened this time is different. The AI write new recipes. Once nature never write. So how do you teach a computer to write DNA? The same way you teach it to write English. Think about how ChatGPT works. You feed it millions of pages of writing. It learns which words tend to follow which. Then it can produce new sentences that make sense. It does not understand meaning the way you do. It has just seen so much language that it knows what looks right. Now swap the books for DNA. The models used here are called Evo 1 and Evo 2. They were trained on genetic code instead of text. And the amount is hard to imagine. Evo 2 was trained on more than 9 trillion letters of DNA taken from bacteria, plants, animals, and viruses. So instead of learning the patterns of English, it learned the patterns of life, which letters usually sit together, where instructions start and stop, what a working recipe looks like. And then the researchers asked it to write a new one. Now here is a detail that matters a lot, and I want to be clear about it. The training data left something out on purpose. Any virus that can infect humans, animals, or plants was deliberately kept out. The model was only shown viruses that attack bacteria. That was a safety choice made before the work began. The team did not pick a random virus. They picked one with a lot of history. It is called FYEX174. It is a virus that only attacks bacteria. A virus that attacks bacteria has a name. It is called a bacteriophage, or just phage. Remember that word, because it matters later. FYEX174 is tiny. Its recipe is about 5,300 letters long, with 11 instructions inside it. For comparison, your DNA has 3 billion letters. This thing has 5,000. And it keeps showing up at every big moment in this field. In 1977, a scientist named Fred Sanger read this virus, letter by letter. It was the first complete DNA recipe humans ever fully read. Anywhere, in any living thing. Then, in 2003, another team built that same recipe from scratch, using chemicals. So humans had now read it and written it out again by hand. And in 2026, the same virus becomes the first one whose recipe was invented by a machine. Read, then copied, now designed. So the AI produced designs, hundreds of thousands of them. Obviously, you cannot build hundreds of thousands of viruses. So the team filtered them down. They checked which designs looked sensible, which ones had their instructions in a workable order, which ones looked like they would still only attack bacteria and nothing else. That left them with about 300 designs. Those were the ones they actually built. Building it means something specific. They ordered the DNA, letter by letter, to match what the AI had written. Then they put it into bacteria and waited to see if anything happened. With most of them, nothing happened. The recipe simply did not work, like a cake recipe with a missing step. But 16 of them worked. Those 16 became real, functioning viruses. They got inside the bacteria, they made copies of themselves, and they burst the bacteria open. And how different were they from anything in nature? Very. Each one had somewhere between 67 and nearly 400 changes compared to the closest thing in nature. Some of them were so different that scientists say they would count as a brand new species. One of them had done something the researchers found genuinely surprising. It had borrowed a part from a completely different virus, one that is only distantly related. Nobody told it to do that. It came up with that combination on its own. And some of these AI-made viruses killed bacteria faster than the natural version does. Now, why would anyone want to make a virus that kills bacteria? Because of a problem that is getting worse every year. When you get a bacterial infection, you take antibiotics. The medicine kills the bacteria. You get better. But bacteria change. Over time, some of them survive the medicine. Those survivors multiply, and eventually the medicine stops working on them. That is what people mean by antibiotic resistance, and it is one of the biggest health problems in the world right now. So scientists have gone back to an old idea. If antibiotics cannot kill the bacteria, use something that can. A phage, a virus that hunts bacteria. This is not new. Phages have been used as medicine in some countries for a long time, and they have one big advantage. A phage usually attacks only one specific kind of bacteria, so it can leave the rest of your body alone. But there is a catch. Bacteria can become resistant to phages too. The same arms race all over again. And this is exactly where the AI part becomes interesting. The team took bacteria that had already become resistant to the natural version of this virus, bacteria that had already won that fight. Then they mixed their 16 AI-made viruses together into one mixture, and they used that on the resistant bacteria. It wiped them out. That is the real promise here. If bacteria learn to survive one virus, you might be able to generate a new one quickly, instead of hunting for one in nature and hoping you get lucky. Now the other side, and it is worth taking seriously because the people raising it are not panicking. They are being careful. Let me start with what this study is not. It is not a threat to you. These 16 viruses can only infect certain strains of one common bacteria called E. coli. The team actually tested that. They tried the viruses on several other bacteria. Nothing grew. The viruses stayed locked on to their one target. They were also handled under strict safety conditions in the lab, tighter than the standard rules require. And they were never tested in any animal or any person, so nothing escaped. And nothing here can make a human sick. But here is the concern, and it is not about these viruses at all. It is about what has now been proven possible. Before this, we did not know if an AI could write a complete recipe for something living and have it actually work. Now we know it can. A microbiologist at the University of Reading, Dr. Simon Clark, put the worry plainly when he spoke to the BBC. This study is not a risk to human health, but it shows that, in theory, you can now create forms of virus that do not exist in nature, and that possibility itself carries risk. He also made a point that is hard to argue with. The models used here were built with safety limits. Human viruses were kept out of the training, but nothing stops someone else from building a different model without those limits. And someone who wants to cause harm is not going to follow safety rules.
So how worried should you actually be? Let's be honest about the gap between what happened and what people are imagining. Designing a working virus recipe is one step. A hard one, but it is one step. Building it needs a real laboratory, real equipment, and people who know what they are doing. Getting something to spread between humans is a completely different problem. And much harder again. Also worth knowing, not every scientist thinks this result is as big as the headlines suggest. One independent review pointed out that the study did not properly compare the AI's designs against simpler, older design methods. So we do not fully know how much of the credit belongs to the AI. So this is not the beginning of a pandemic, but it is a real line being crossed. And the sensible response is not fear. It is rules, decided now, while this is still early. For as long as we have studied biology, we have been readers. We learned to read the code. Then we learned to copy it. Then we learned to cut and paste small pieces of it. This is the first time we have handed a machine a blank page, and it has written something living that works. 16 of them, none of which had ever existed before. And they were written by something that has never been alive. So how worried should you actually be? Let's be honest about the gap between what happened and what people are imagining. Designing a working virus recipe is one step. A hard one, but it is one step. Building it needs a real laboratory, real equipment, and people who know what they are doing. Getting something to spread between humans is a completely different problem. And much harder again. Also worth knowing, not every scientist thinks this result is as big as the headlines suggest. One independent review pointed out that the study did not properly compare the AI's designs against simpler, older design methods. So we do not fully know how much of the credit belongs to the AI. So this is not the beginning of a pandemic, but it is a real line being crossed. And the sensible response is not fear, it is rules, decided now while this is still early. For as long as we have studied biology, we have been readers. We learned to read the code, then we learned to copy it, then we learned to cut and paste small pieces of it. This is the first time we have handed a machine a blank page, and it has written something living that works. 16 of them, none of which had ever existed before. And they were written by something that has never been alive.